Hello, 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 and welcome back to the Lifeboat Live with me, absolutely Arian. And we are now Thursday, April 13th, and it is 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and we are live right now on Facebook and on YouTube. And I have a very special guest with us tonight. Her name is Tamara, and she is waiting backstage. I'll have her on in a minute. So if you are watching on Facebook, I'd ask you to hit share and tag some friends in the comments so that they can come in and join the conversation. Please, as you do come in, let me know where you're watching from, and I would love to interact with you. Make sure that you just leave some comments and join the conversation. Let me just change my privacy settings so that it can be shared. And there we go. Perfect. So now, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to ask that you make sure that you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so that you are notified every time that we go live every week. So yes, if you are watching on the replay, welcome. We're no longer here. However, I still come back and will engage with your comments. So please feel free to still leave them nonetheless. So yes, I don't want to keep us here too long. Tonight we are talking about what it's like being Black in corporate spaces. And not just, of course, tonight my guest is a woman, but she also is an expert in diversity and inclusion conversation. She does many workshops for different corporations. And she is going to be sharing with us from her personal experience and also her knowledge. I also will be talking a little bit about my experience, and hopefully this is going to help people understand what it's like to be a Black woman in North America in the corporate world, or at least what our experience has been like. So without further ado, please welcome my special guest, Tamara Angeline. Welcome her.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hello, hi, how are you?
I was honored to be on the lifeboat, eh?
Yes. Well, this is not your first time on the lifeboat, actually. This is your second time. The last time that you were on, you had a beautiful testimony that you shared about just your journey and your life lessons that you've learned along life journey, which is really what, the lifeboat is about. Sharing and so that people can glean from our experiences. So I would still love for you to reintroduce yourself to the lifeboat audience. Let us know who you are and what you do. Although I kind of said a little bit, but
yeah, a little bit. So my name is Tamara Angeline. I'm the Director of Black Community Initiatives at the Disabled Women's Network of Canada. I wear many hats, but I always say the hat that I love the most is that I'm a servant and I'm a helper. So even when I was going to school, everyone asked me, what do you want to do? And I just kept saying, I just want to help people. So part-time, I'm also a family worker. I do clinical work as a clinical educator at a rehabilitation center for teen and young mothers. And I'm also currently pursuing my MSW. So a lot of stuff is going on. I host a radio show on CKUT on Fridays. And as Ariane so elegantly put it, I also do workshops for corporate, commercial, and nonprofit organizations on various topics ranging from racism and discrimination, equity, diversity and inclusion, Black healing, and gender-based violence.
Wow. Well, yeah, and
I'm hyper.
You are doing it, right? And so I love that. I love those topics. And, it's something that I am very passionate about myself. I think I've still got some growing and healing to do in those areas.
We all do. It's a lifelong journey.
It is. However, I feel like sometimes the topic can be in some moments triggering, because it kind of brings you back to certain moments where you may have experienced certain things. And so it can be a little tough sometimes to talk about, especially when you are challenged by sometimes your audiences, right? So I'd love to get into it. So why is diversity and inclusion and equity and all that stuff. Like, why is that important, especially in the corporate world that we live in let's talk about maybe even just Canada.
Okay, first, right now that you can see there's definitely a trend going on with diversity, equity, and inclusion. I call it checkbox DEI. That's what we see a lot, right? So that's when certain organizations or corporations are trying to meet a certain quota. So they have to hire a certain amount of women, a certain amount of members of 2S LGBTQ plus community, a certain number of employees who have disabilities, right? But with all that being said, when it's done in a checkbox way, the organization is not actually equipped in regards to culture, organizational cohesion, teamwork, policies, and procedures to actually hold spaces for these individuals to be their full selves. So the workshops that we give really aim at identifying, okay, you want to check a box saying that you have people with disabilities, you have Black people, so on and so forth, but what are you doing for your diverse staff, for your diverse population that you host in your organization? And I always start with at the higher levels, right? So when we have our workshops, usually we do it for managers separately than staff, because there's certain things that staff just won't say. And we know that people who are already oppressed or people who are marginalized we become accustomed to being censored. And that's something that like it's hard also to navigate in the workplace, right? It's hard to be your full selves, but what I always try to do is to tell people it's crucial for you to bring yourself fully, because it forces those spaces to change, to embrace you. If we constantly just assimilate ourselves and amalgamate ourselves to the status quo, we're doing not only ourselves a disservice, but the organization a disservice, and the people who don't look like us, right? They're getting a version of us that is tailor-made. It's not authentic, right? So it does both of us a disservice. But I think the really importance of it is because for the same reason why I don't use the word ethnic minority anymore, I use global majority, because ethnic minority to who? To which hemisphere? To which country? You know what I mean? Globally, racialized and ethnic people make up around 80 to 85% of the population, right? So if you're in an organization where everyone is still cisgender, male, Anglo-Saxon, able-bodied, heterosexual, you know what I mean? You cannot relate to whether you're selling a product, your clients, whether you're providing a service. You can't relate to the diversity that's out there in terms of clientele, in terms of service users, right? And it's the same thing that I'm learning right now more and more in my master's. A lot of the topics that we're touching on in regards to getting, practitioners to be sensitized to the fact that people are diverse, people have very varied experiences. So, equity versus equality, we don't need the same things, because some of us start back 100 yards behind. So we need equity, right? A lot of discussions are being had about that in the field of social work, and for me, being a Black marginalized individual, a lot of these topics I'm already aware of. So I'm wondering, like, what is going on, right? Because the most fields are saturated with non-racialized individuals. That is why it is so important to really, infuse this type of terminology and train them to be culturally sensitive, to adopt culturally responsive practices, even if you're at the bank. We had me and my partner who I do these workshops with, we actually had we got contracted by a big bank in Quebec to do like 6 workshops. And when we did it for the managers, we're talking about anti-racism, racial discrimination, and microaggressions in the workplace, which is like subtle ways of projecting your implicit biases on others, or stereotyping people. And the first thing that we said is, like, you want to make sure that you're inclusive, but how many managers look like you? How many managers are Black? How many supervisors are Black? And if they're not applying, are you going to do the research to find out what is preventing them from applying? Do they feel right away they won't get it because their disability, because their sex, their gender, because of their race? These are discussions that corporations and organizations really need to have in order to get to the meat of the matter. But like, to come back to your original question, it's important because the world is diverse. And if you're only serving a certain kind of people, that's cool with you. but don't try to smack dab a Black person in the middle just because it's Black History Month. What are
Right.
you doing for Black communities all year round? What
Right.
are you doing for women all year round and not just on March 8th? You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
we try to kind of infuse that mentality, that type of mentality when we do our workshops. This isn't just a 1 month event thing. This isn't just a one-time thing. This is a lifestyle. This is a culture change. This is a shift, a transformation, and an evolution that the organization should go through, because that's the world that we live in.
Right. And I love that, when you say like the world we live in is diverse, like, so it shouldn't just be a conversation just because like we want numbers and checking boxes. Like you said, we need to be able to um oh, I sorry, I forgot about these comments. Oh, hello, Pastor Holton Morris. Thank you for.
Hello, Pastor.
Yeah, I see Lady Morris is on here too. Thank you for joining. And yes, this is a needed discussion. This is something that we, I think, need to talk about openly and just, be able to just also inform people on why it's important to have diversity and inclusion. So for me, I would love to say that, so um, it's great to have that diversity and to bring all these different people in, and people with disabilities, people, people of different ethnicities, all that stuff. But then a lot of the times when you get to these corporations and you join, or you get hired, I should say, some of the times it can look like you are the poster for, hey, like, now look at us, we are
Are you being tokenized?
right, and we're being now tokenized to be like, there's something to do with Black history. Hey, Black employee, can we use you for our campaign? Hey, we want to, do an advert. Hey, Black person, can we use your face to do this and that? Or really just like looking to you about, or looking to the one uh, ethnic, or the few ethnic people who you have working in, let's say, maybe management positions, to be the spokesperson for
The entire community.
right? So like, what does it look like now for when you've now opened the box, opened the hiring pool to all these different people, because you want to have this inclusion and diversity? How do you then make these people that you're bringing in comfortable? Like, how do you make them now feel welcomed and also not tokenized within the workplace?
Um, So first, I'm going to go back to what you mentioned about the tokenization thing.
Yeah.
I think all of us have experienced it. A lot of us who work in corporate organizations or nonprofit organizations or private sector that is predominantly non-racialized.
Mhm.
You do get tokenized. It's unfortunate because these people have no one else to relate to. They cannot be the voice of for Black History Month or for Women International Women's Month if they're all white men, right?
Right.
So at the same time, it's like a two-edged sword. We It's a blessing, it's a curse, right?
Mhm.
It's a curse because we're always being tokenized, as in be the spokesperson, but it's a blessing because we have the opportunity to bring our full self to the table.
Right.
And that is something that I have. So it's not only a responsibility on the side of the organization, it's also a responsibility on our side. We have a duty, right? We have a duty. So it's our responsibility as marginalized people, as oppressed people, or people who have been oppressed, to think for the next person that looks like us. Because
Mhm.
representation does matter. And if we
Mhm.
don't do it, I would rather someone like us do it and step up to that tokenizing plate or whatever,
Right.
versus someone who doesn't care about the community that we're holding on our shoulders.
Mhm.
Because that is the biggest part of it. We're being tokenized to be spokespeople, but we have the opportunity to
Use
guide
the
and
platform.
facilitate
Yeah.
those discussions. So when I'm in those positions, what I always do, I first of all, I make sure the population that I'm speaking on is always included. So if we're doing projects, if we're doing roundtables, if we're doing conferences, I
Mhm.
always make sure that if we're talking about racialized individuals, let's have racialized people outside of the organization who has lived experience to provide their expertise. Let's pay them for that. Let's give them honoraria for that. You have to
Mhm.
use your position to really not just blab, but really
Mhm.
walk and be about it, right?
Right.
So that's the responsibility on our end. For these organizations, they need to learn, they need to be taught. It sounds very weird, but if you're taking, if, for example, if we grew up only in Black neighborhoods,
Mhm.
only went to Black schools, we only worked in Black businesses where other Black people, Jamaican, Haitian, Vinci, all that, only. And then by the time we're like 40, we decide to, I don't know, get a job in some other area, and there's all white people.
Mhm.
We ourselves, it will be a learning curve for us, also learning how to
Right.
relate. I'm pretty
Right.
sure for people who are born in like Jamaica, and born in countries that are predominantly Black, and you come to Canada, your experiences with white people, you're gonna go through a culture shift there. And it's the same
Yeah.
thing with organizations have cultures, right?
Mhm.
And just leaders need to be taught as much as staff, as much as employee. And me, that's why I treat everybody unilaterally. I don't
Mhm.
care if you're cleaning the toilets, I don't care if you're the CEO, I'm going to treat everyone the same.
Right.
And it's the culture thing. Not only do these individuals who are in positions of power, they have to be trained. And when we do our workshops, we say training is not just a one-time thing, it is ongoing. You
Right.
need to have ongoing refreshers if you've been raised in an environment, a rural white environment, that you only see depictions of Black people on the media, and we know how stereotypical that is. They already have implicit biases that has really contorted their mind to say Black people are like this, Black women are like this, transgender people are like that, women in general are like this, right? It depends
Right.
on also socialization and culturation. But as I feel that as long as the leaders are willing, as long as they are open, they can
Mhm.
be receptive to change. Because the change that they're going to go through when you're hiring diverse people and it's different out of your norm, it's going to be uncomfortable. There's going to
Mhm.
be conflicts that's going to arise. There's going to be clashes. Um, in layman terms, a lot of people are going to have to be put in their place diplomatically.
Mhm.
But that's where it's a two-edged sword. So it's not in just on the hands of the leaders to learn, but it's
Right.
also the hands of those who are diverse to take up their full space. Because if not, the people who are in positions of power to change the policies and legislation and procedures and all that, they won't have that urge to change and to adopt different, more culturally responsive strategies if diverse people don't show up as their full selves.
Right. So, Pastor Morris says, is there a genuine effort by these companies to change based on what you have seen?
Me personally, okay. Yes and no. So it really depends on the organization. What I've noticed is community organizations and those in community sectors, the leaders who are non-racialized, you can see that they have more of a desire to be able to really relate to their population that they serve, because
Mhm.
these nonprofits and in the community sectors is more so like helping professions, right?
Mhm.
And if we take, for example, the issue of poverty, statistics show that there's certain demographics that have a are disproportionately impacted by poverty, right? If
Mhm.
we take gender-based violence, there's certain demographics that are disproportionately impacted by gender-based violence: elderly, youth, women, especially Black women, Indigenous women, people with disabilities, um, teenagers, and so on and so forth. So, with those demographics at the community level, more of them I feel are more receptive to it. At the corporate level, from when we did the workshops for the banks, we noticed that that was really more check, like ticking the box. So what we did, knowing that we were being tokenized, we
Mhm.
used that opportunity to really ruffle some feathers. So we
Mhm.
didn't just allow them to tokenize us. We came up fully as ourselves, and we hit it where it mattered. What are your hiring policies? What does HR look like? When there's an issue of race that's brought to HR, how is it handled, right?
Right.
What is the escalation process? Who can these people go to feel safe? Do they feel safe?
Right.
Have you ever
Right.
questioned if they feel safe, right? So we use that opportunity to really um, have a leverage for change,
Mhm.
right? So I think it's like it depends. I find more in some in more like commercial organizations, it's more of a checking the box, but that's up to us who are like interventionists, who are speakers, who are facilitators, who are change makers, to really come in and identify that right away, so that we
Mhm.
know what methods and means we need to in order to at least leave them with an impact. We might not stay around for months to be able to say, oh, your hiring practice changed, right?
Right.
But we always like to make our workshops engaging. So we're learning from them as well. So we're learning their frame of mind. Where are you at? Like, how were you raised? You know,
Mhm.
where did these, trying to get them to think about how did these habits and behaviors and ways of thinking form? Who told you to think like this? Where did you
Right.
see it from? Right. And I think that that's, oh, any change or healing or anything like that, it starts with awareness, whether
Mhm.
it's self-awareness, awareness of others, the world you live in. So it starts with your perspective, how you view yourself in relation to others, how you view others in relation to the world, the systems that envelope us, and everything like that. So with corporations, that's mainly the impact we try to leave, knowing that they are also using us. So we're like, okay, if you're going to be tokenizing us for Black History Month, if you're going to tokenize us for Women's International Month, let's really change the way you think. Let's
Right.
try to focus more, less on this is why you should hire people who look like me
Mhm.
versus what is your policies show? What are your percentages of hiring rates show? How
Mhm.
many Black individuals are managers? We ask the hard questions right away because
Right.
those ones will stick to them.
Mhm. So, and I love that. I love the fact that like you change the course based on what you're seeing, experiencing,
Mhm,
so that you kind of like you curate it to the need, even though they may not even realize that that is the need the need
mhm,
for
mhm.
their organization. They're not even aware or conscious of it yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's awesome. Nessa, thank you for joining. Good to see you as well. So if you guys have not hit share or if you're on YouTube, make sure that you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. Just an FYI, we soon will be merging just onto YouTube only. We will not be on Facebook anymore. So if you don't have a YouTube account, make sure you go ahead and like create that, sign in, and subscribe to the Lifeboat with Absolutely Arian. So moving to what you were saying, I want to go into like the mental health aspect and also share from my own
It's a
experience.
big one.
Yes, because me personally, as just a young Black person, girl growing up in Montreal, Quebec, I have experienced racism from the scholastic um,
Book
space,
fair? Oh,
space. No, so being in a
okay,
scholar
academic. Yeah, yeah.
academic space, and in the academic space from elementary all the way up to to the to the corporate world, and then
Mhm,
just everyday life, right?
mhm,
I'm not saying that every experience I've had, no, but I have had blatant experiences where I've either been called the N word, I've been beaten up, I've been by by children whose parents obviously taught them that it wasn't, you
to
know,
have those ways of
those
thought.
kind of
Mhm,
thoughts, yeah, towards Black children or Black people in general. And I remember sometime last year, I had a moment where I was with my family and we were talking about just what it's like to be a Black woman in a position of leadership in a corporation, and what that has looked like for me. And so I I didn't realize how overwhelmed I had become by a lot of the microaggressions that I had faced, either from hearing things being said about other people of different uh, ethnicities,
ethnicities, yeah.
religions, or even just things said to me directly. Um, and also dealing with the shame of not always advocating for myself because I didn't want to be stereotyped as the angry
The
Black
angry
woman.
Black woman thinking
Right.
about I should have said this, I should
Right.
have done this. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, and in the moment, you sometimes freezing, not knowing what to say because if I say something, I might step out of line in this moment. Um, and then also then being upset and ashamed afterwards for just like not advocating for myself the way I felt like I should have. Um, you know, and so I feel like um sometime at the end of last year when I was going through it, I was very triggered by a conversation I had with another colleague of mine who had been facing some of the same things, and he passed away. And so, like, suddenly, maybe 2 weeks after we had had that conversation about
Mm-hmm,
something
mm-hmm,
we had had. And
mm-hmm,
so it triggered something in me because I realized that we were having a lot of the same experiences, but we had never talked about it amongst each other. And we just never talked about it in general. We never reported some of the behaviors that we had experienced, things that we had seen. And it was heartbreaking for me to know that we had both been struggling with similar challenges, and it took for one of us to be brave enough to say, like, hey, by the way, like, do you experience this with that? And for us to be like, oh yeah, you know. And so I had a moment where I broke down into tears and almost hyperventilating because I had been carrying the burden of all the microaggressions. And I would love for you to explain what a microaggression is too, for those who may not know. But all the microaggressions that I had experienced, all the blatant discrimination that I had experienced, or just insults towards, you know, black people that really just hurt me. And the fact that I had to carry that with the fear of ever speaking out because I didn't want to be isolated. I didn't want to be I didn't want to have to maybe face consequences for speaking up or for being the martyr, you know what I mean? And possibly making my life more difficult in my corporate corporation. Now, this is to say that wouldn't necessarily be the outcome, because I never actually spoke up the way I needed to, but it was my fear nonetheless, right?
mm-hmm.
Um,
So,
yes, sorry, I just want to, being a manager as a Black person, do you find the workers show you less respect than their white counterparts? I think it's more actually me being a woman than it is me being Black a lot of the times. But I'm sure the Blackness doesn't help. But I would say, to be fair, that the majority of the people I manage, the majority, and I would say a very big majority, are very fair and respectful. There are very few small numbers that are not. And they obviously were not blatant with their disrespect or shown me this, that the reason for their disrespect is because of my race. But there have been moments where I've definitely asked myself, is that why? Based on their attitudes and some of the comments that they've made in the past about others. So yes, but I will let you, Tamara, jump in here when you like.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry, it was like I was so into what you were saying, I don't even know where to jump in or what to say.
Yeah.
But just to start, so microaggressions are like subtle behaviors, words, gestures, comments that are discriminatory. You know, the definition will tell you some nice loosey goosey thing, but I'm telling you, if you tell me that I speak well for a Black person, that's a microaggression. If you say you could you park well for a woman, that's a microaggression. Behavior microaggressions are, for example, when you walk into a room and you have someone warming up, like in a cafeteria, and you have someone warming up their ethnic meal, and then you're like, oh, that stinks, right? Like, because it's, or associating certain smells with certain cultures. It could be in exclusionary practices, right? Like, having meetings and excluding certain people for your own judgments. Just the view that, okay, a Black woman, when they speak up for themselves, they're being hostile. You telling me I'm hostile because I'm talking in the same tone as everyone else? That's a microaggression.
Or being
Because
assertive.
where am I being hostile at? Like, where's the difference between my other counterparts doing the same thing versus me? So I have definitely, I totally understand race-based trauma is a thing. It's a thing that I recently had to, I prepared a parliamentary brief alongside one of my colleagues at our work, and we presented it to the House of Commons at Parliament in Ottawa. And we talked about the mental health of young women and girls, right? My focus, of course, is always Black. I keep it Black. I don't care when people are going to get tired of me. when they look at me first, before they say woman, they say black. So
Mhm.
I associate like that. They don't say, oh, you're a woman black. No, they say black woman
You're
first.
about to
You
get
know what
correct.
I mean? So
Right.
I always have to add on the race, the gender, the spirituality, everything else is layered into who I am. And
Yeah.
that's where the intersectional component comes in, right? That all the intersections of our identities make us who we are.
Yeah.
So when we presented we presented that parliament to various political parties like the NDP, Bloc Québécois, the Liberal Party, and the Conservatives, right?
Mhm.
And we highlighted the fact that race-based trauma is a big thing and something that they don't talk about enough, right? And to what you were saying in the corporate world, navigating that space mentally, it does have its impact on us for
Yes.
sure. Um,
Yes.
but we live in a world where no one gives us favors. We already see that, right?
Mhm.
That favor comes with privilege. We live in an anti-black world. The privilege is not ours. Me, honestly, academically, I've excelled so much. I'm privileged compared to some of my friends who, you know what I mean? We, even amongst our own communities, certain of us have certain privileges.
Absolutely.
If you're able to pay mortgage, that's a privilege. If you have your own
Right.
car, it's a privilege. And I
Mhm.
think that's something we need to acknowledge too. But we must take the wheel in our own health. You know
Right.
what I mean? And it's sad because a lot of people remain silent and they suffer in silence.
Mhm.
And you're not being your full authentic self if your mouth is closed, right? No, just like a baby, when a baby is born, a baby is not, it's not silent. And
Right.
if you know if a child's silent, they're up to no good, right?
Mhm.
So it's the same thing with us. Babies, when they want something, they cry, they whine, they make noise so that you understand and you're able to meet their needs. But us at our grown age, our needs are never met, and that's why we have these mental health issues, because we're not vocalizing it, we're internalizing everything, and all
Mhm.
that internalized emotion, that energy is eating away at us, is causing disorders, is causing health issues, not just mental but
Mhm.
physical. It translates physically.
Mhm.
Cardiovascular disease correlates with mental health issues. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Blood pressure, your immune system, fibroids correlate with stress and mental health issues. So we have to also understand that our suffering um, lasts as long as we want it to. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
To a certain extent. There's people with vast mental health orders and disorders and everything like that, and people who are really sick. But if I could go to the gym and I could see someone who's disabled physically, and they're still working on the treadmill, that means everybody could take initiative to their own healing, to their own journey.
Right.
So when I started working where I was working in 2015, and I had a very hard time.
Mhm.
I had a very, very, very hard time. It was difficult. Also, that was the time that I just got baptized. Everything in my life was changing. And I felt like an immense pressure on me to be this perfect person
Mhm.
and to not come off aggressive, to not come off, you know, like unbecoming, to be diplomatic, to be nice and sweet. But
Mhm.
you know what? Sometimes you need to advocate, all times, you need to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
And to other people, they won't always like it,
Yeah.
but if you're advocating for yourself to protect your space, to protect your peace, to protect your mental health, you have to do it. And that's something that I learned now. So when I'm in instances when someone does something, I speak up right away.
Mhm.
I've been there with the whole not speaking up right away. Then I go home and I feel upset. I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's taking up time in my mind rent free. It's changed.
Mhm.
My thoughts now have translated to emotions that I feel in my body. My
Mhm.
heart is racing. I feel upset. Now it's become a physiological thing, right?
Yeah.
Because I didn't handle it how I wanted to.
Mhm.
So I said that no longer will I allow things to go unsaid. you
Mhm.
know, if I feel that I'm being treated unjustly, I will vocalize it, because I have the same way I have to advocate for other people who can't advocate for themselves. I
Right.
have to make the example with myself and advocate for myself. And that is in the form of speaking up. That is in the form of helping others, bringing things to awareness, having meetings with managers, having meetings with other directors like myself, even meeting with staff just to see how staff were impacted by certain things. If I'm feeling like this, I check in with other people just to see how they're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think that is, at our organization, even though there's so many things that you could say is going wrong, I think the fact that we've created a culture amongst ourselves where we're there for each other, we check in on each other. How are you feeling?
Yeah.
That comment was made, and it really, that comment, I found it inappropriate. How did it make you feel? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because people, when they feel like it could be only them, or when they're not talking, or when we're not asking how other people's felt about certain things that we know were offensive, we're creating silos. So
Right.
one person in their own corner, another person in their own corner. Nothing has ever been won in silos. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? No court case has been won in silos. You need a team. You need a paralegal. You need a lawyer. You need a defendant. You need all these people, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing when you're mobilizing in a workplace against injustice, against discrimination, against, you know, microaggressions. You have to talk about it. You need to know who else is experiencing these things, and then you guys come together and you do something about it. You
Right.
bring it to the attention of HR, or you know, you bring it to the attention of someone, a supervisor, someone uh,
Yeah.
who can make a change. In my position, I am a people's supervisor, you know what I mean? I supervise managers, I supervise coordinators. So I try to keep that line of communication open so
Mm-hmm.
they feel, so that's why it goes back to the culture again. So they feel comfortable enough to express that, you know what? We were at this conference, and this person made this comment, and I didn't know how to act. We'll break it down. You know what I mean? We'll go see that person together. We'll break it down. We'll work through it as a team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very important to adopt that type of mentality in organizations. Doesn't matter how big or small,
Mm-hmm.
because if your staff is sick, your outputs are not going to be where you want it to be.
Right.
If the inputs are lacking, or you know what I mean, the outcome of all the work that you're doing, you're not gonna, it's not gonna be as successful as intended. Um, but yeah, for me, definitely have been in those situations. Speaking up has really helped. Like I was telling you before that we came on, I just did this big policy forum that I planned alongside colleagues in December, for civil society members, for some um, politicians, and as well as community, non like grassroots organizations.
Mm-hmm.
And when we were debriefing it, I straight up told the CEO, and while we had a session with our strategic planner, all racialized directors were treated like the help. Because me and another racialized director, how we moved
Mm-hmm.
unilaterally, like I said. So at the conference, we're at the table with all the staff. Just because
Mm-hmm.
we're a director and making some odd money doesn't mean I'm any more than you or less than you. So we
Right.
sat with all the staff. We sat with people who were just attending cares, who were there just to help people in wheelchairs get their food, right?
Yeah.
And we noticed that, you know, other people like were at a table, and it was only the white people. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a good look. They weren't communicating with us about, like, you know, the run of show or anything like that. So I called them out. I said, you made all the racialized people feel like the help.
Mm-hmm.
And I, by saying that, was met by a microaggression, because what I was told was that my comment made was hurtful.
Mm.
So that is in a sense of microaggression. Sometimes when we call people out for things that, you know, like racism,
Mm-hmm.
discrimination, and all that, sometimes it makes people feel so uncomfortable
Right.
that they would turn it around on you to make it seem like you did something wrong.
Right.
But you know,
Taking accountability, they then deflect
they
and make
on
about
you,
yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And those are things that we have to live with. But we can't take people's ignorance or uh, lack of awareness and let those seeds take root in us.
Right.
They're supposed to just hit us, and that's it. We have a choice to hold on to those things.
Mm-hmm.
We have a choice to ruminate on negative thoughts and feelings, or not to. And I came in my at a point in my life where I just decided I am not gonna try. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I have bad days, I have bad
Mm-hmm.
everything, but I try not to hold on to it as much as I used to.
Uh, okay, so we have a comment here. Based on what I've seen since I am in Canada, there have been gains in the workplace, the acceptance of visible minorities. What are some things that need to be done to advance this acceptance?
Oh, that's me.
I believe it was.
Oh,
It,
um, I think, you know, even we say slow progress is better than no progress. And
Mhm.
like sometimes like a lot of us who are doing like advocacy or activism, like you get tired. You don't see it as the change as fast, right? But
Yeah,
one thing that you need to understand is that new generations are coming up hearing these things more than the generations before, more than the generation before and before that.
absolutely.
So talking about it, keep talking about it, raising awareness is crucial, because where we are today, me and you would not even be in our positions in our jobs, or even academically or entrepreneurial like realms and all that stuff
Yeah,
60, 70, 100 years ago, right?
absolutely.
So what has changed is that there's people who have taken up the mantle to do the work, to do the grunt work, to keep talking, to spread awareness. And the more people that hear the word, you know what I mean,
Mhm.
the more people that hear you, the more people that agree with it, they get a revelation, they understand it differently.
Mhm.
It plants seeds in people, you know what I
Right.
mean. Words and what you say and what you do plant seeds in people. And I feel
Mhm.
like the why that has changed so much and is so much more accepting is because the younger generations are growing up now, with friends of all different races. They're
Right.
growing up now with friends of all different sexualities, races, living in Westmount and living in, Ville Saint Pierre. You know, like they're
Mhm.
not they're not just secluded to their own, to people who look like them. They have a lot more exposure to people who are different than them. So to them, they don't see the difference. We're all one, you know. So I
Yeah.
feel like that has helped a lot as well, you know.
Well, also, I think um, just social media has been a situation too that has had this globalized, has given people access to people and things and information, right? We're in the information era. So people are able to also, if like there's no reason anymore why nobody can't find out something about
Mhm,
other people's religions, races. So the excuse of I just don't know is just really hard to use nowadays,
mhm,
especially for, I would say, our generation who are like the techie, you know, like all the millennials who are, we know how to Google, we know how to use our phones, we know how to find information if we really want to, right?
mhm,
And so if we're curious, if we're inquisitive, if we want to know, we can know. And so I think, and I see the difference in, for example, work colleagues of mine who are in my generation, right, of millennials and the way they think, um, and maybe older generations who had a completely different upbringing, have a different
mhm,
ideology, worldview, of what it is to mix and mingle, right?
mhm, mhm, yeah.
And I see it in even how we talk about mental health amongst one another, how we value mental health. Our work ethic is different. Where I
Oh
find like,
yeah, we taking our time back. We
right,
taking the full hour
work.
lunch. You ain't calling
Listen,
me.
right. We value. I find in the younger generations, we value our personal time. We value our time off. We are not willing to maybe be workaholics and take all of our work home. Like when we are on vacation, we are on vacation. Whereas and we're doing our 40 hours and clocking out because we value our personal time, our family time, our friend time, our self-care, right? Whereas a lot of the older generation are very much about work, 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 work. You have to do this, you have to do that in order to look good, to be efficient, to be seen as a good worker. And so if I do 80 hours in 1 week, then I have proven that I have a great work ethic,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
I've done my due diligence giving my life to the company. Now,
Especially if you're
exactly.
racialized. But that's what was passed down onto them. Because if you think about it, like when my grandparents came down here, my grandparents came down here during, that time when they were recruiting a lot of people to working homes and hospitals and like as housekeepers and stuff like that, right? So
Yeah.
they're already coming with the mentality like, okay, you're working in a white environment, you have to give, you already have so much against
20%.
you, you have to give up 500%,
Yeah.
right? So they create a standard so that the generation after them, which is our parents, are like, you have to give 500%, but sometimes you can still speak up for yourself.
Yeah.
We understand. I'm human just like you. When I die, my bones, you won't tell if I'm black or white. If my skin's not on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm giving my 100%. I'm giving my 100%, and I'm demanding to be treated just as equally, just with equitably as with anybody else. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what they look like and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So yeah, the awareness of it has definitely changed, like you said. But as to what you were saying about not tolerating people saying that they don't know, right? The
Mhm.
thing about that is some people don't know that they don't know.
Right.
They've just been. We know that
And
they
that's
don't
privilege.
know.
That's the privilege
It's
of,
privilege. We
yeah.
know that they don't know. They've just been. So to
Mhm.
them, it's not even a thought to say, let me Google this. Let me research this.
Right.
You know what I mean? Why would it be if they don't think anything is wrong?
And it's not in
That's
their
why
reality.
awareness, that's why awareness, I bring that up all the time. Awareness is the first step, because you could live in not that knowing that you don't know sector for all your life.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Look how many people grow old and we look at them and we're just like, how didn't you mature? Because they
Yeah.
don't know. They don't know what they don't know, right?
Right.
Why didn't you learn this already? You're in your 60s. Why are you still at the same place you were in your 40s or your 30s? Like, what didn't you get? Because they didn't know, they weren't aware that this is something that they should have known. They weren't even aware of the steps to take place to increase their knowledge, to become aware of that certain thing, to address certain issues,
Yeah.
you
It's
know?
called unconscious incompetence is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even know that you don't know, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm.
until maybe it's brought to your attention, or you run into a wall and then you have to really study life for a second,
Mm-hmm. And look
um,
introspectively.
and look introspectively, where which brings you to a place of conscious incompetence, right? Which is now
Mm-hmm.
you're conscious of the fact that you don't know, but you don't know, or
What you should know.
you don't know how to maybe get the tools to do
Mm-hmm.
the thing, right? And so, but because of the introspective work, you will now maybe hopefully go look for the tools and then become consciously competent, which is
Mm-hmm.
now,
Or just be more aware and open. Because
yeah,
once you're open and you're aware that there's things that you don't know and you're willing to be informed, that's when the information just starts to flow to you. Relationships that are different start to flow to you.
yeah,
Opportunities, doors start to open that never opened before. And in all the, just like it says that you have to be in position to receive your blessing, you also have to be ready to be receptive to certain knowledge, certain
yeah,
relationships. They won't
yeah.
come your way if you're closed minded. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Or if they do, you won't even see the blessing. You won't even see the opportunity.
Right, right, right. Listen, I think it's so important for us to be open, to be willing to learn, to be able to, like you said, look introspectively. Um, even as people of that are marginalized people, minorities, it's important
Not
to even
minorities. We're majorities.
majority.
We're
Okay.
majority.
Yeah, also to look at your own biases, right? And to, because sometimes it's easy to say, well, me, but also how about the biases you may have also about other,
Accountability.
right?
And it
And
goes
so,
back to what you said, taking up our space in these predominantly white workplaces. We have to be accountable also for ourselves, for the
mhm,
space that we're taking up, and what that means for us and the people who look like us. Because when we're in those spaces, we're representing for other people to be like, oh, you're a director of a nonprofit, I could do that. Oh, you're a manager at a well-established organization, corporation, I
yeah,
could be there too, right? So we're setting the foundation for those after us, just like those before us have done.
I'm going to tell you something. So I like to make a habit, and we all typically do this as managers, but when we have like new employees coming in, especially like from the front line, or the entry level positions uh, under my department, I typically like to go when they're in training and go introduce myself and let them know about my journey, how I started, and how I've grown in the company, right? And a lot of the times when I go to those classes, and there are people, uh, especially I would say when I see other Black girls in the class, I see a sparkle in their eyes while they're as I'm speaking, and like they're like making eye contact with me and like just watching me as I talk about it, because they're just like, oh my gosh, like she's a Black girl. And
Mhm.
and sometimes I'm intentional about making sure that I'm that day that I know I'm going to class, that I wear
Your
my
hair natural curls.
hair
Yes, I feel
right,
you.
because I want them to. I want to be intentional about how I'm representing myself within this corporation, right?
Mhm.
Within the corporation, and so when I see that sparkle in their eyes, I'm just like, man, like I'm so happy that I could be that, because I remember when I started, there was one. And
Mhm.
she's now my colleague, right? And she hired me. And I remember when I saw her and I was like, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
there's a Black manager here, you know?
Mhm.
And here we are, and it's kind of come full circle. And she hired me. I'm now her colleague. And I
Mhm.
get to do the same thing now as other young people come in, and
Mhm.
so it's a beautiful circle of just moving forward and
Mhm.
upward. And so yeah, that's what it
That's what I
is.
said. It's a blessing and a curse. And
Yeah.
you're saying that I'm thinking I never had that experience in the workplaces. I've never worked and seen someone in the position where I am now and be like, I want to be where you at. I
Yeah.
didn't have that opportunity, but I
Yeah.
did have that opportunity in the academic sphere. And maybe that is why I really want to go all the end to get my PhD, to just give that feeling to someone else. Because when I had my first Black professor who was in her late 30s, I was like,
Mhm.
why is it my first Black professor? Like, I was so amazed and I was so
Yeah.
drawn to her, even though it was a sexuality class, and I was always bringing like the Christian point of view, and she was just bringing me the theory point of view. So we were always
Yeah.
clashing. I really thought that she didn't like me. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
at the same time, I was just like, wow, this is the first Black professor I've ever had. And then
Yeah.
at the same time, I was like, why is this the first Black professor I've ever had? And
Yeah.
that's why I said, I want to go all the way in my education so that when I am teaching in universities and there's students who look like me and they can relate to me, they'll be encouraged too to be like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like just that feeling, like I know that in your
Representation
chest.
matters. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it really does. And we don't even realize consciously sometimes, but you feel it. I will never forget that. I will
Yeah.
never forget that professor, even though we clashed a lot. I will
Yeah.
never forget her because I felt comfortable enough to clash with her. I felt
Yeah.
comfortable enough to tell her that I don't agree with what she's teaching. You know what I mean? Like, and she provided a space where once again, I could have been my full self and
Yeah.
not agree with the whole class. And I think that's I think that's the best thing about it when it comes to representation is finding your place in a place that's not meant for you or that was never created or designed for you.
Yeah. Oh, we got really enjoyed this discussion, guys. Thank you so much.
Oh.
And so, I mean, I do you have so we've come to the end of our session here, and I just want to know, do you have any closing thoughts you want to give us before we go ahead and sign
uh,
off?
I probably said it 5 million times, but show up as you.
Hmm.
Don't show up as you. Uh, be your authentic self. And that doesn't mean be mean or anything. And it doesn't mean really shy away from the teachings of your parents or your elders or those that you looked up to. But it's find a way to navigate the spaces that you're in that serve you as much as it serves your environment, that
Hmm.
honors you every step of the way as much as it can honor people who look like you. I
Hmm.
think that is at the point where we are in this era. It's crucial that everybody who looks like us, that everybody who never had opportunities before, who are in positions of opportunities, that everybody who's breaking generational cycles to be their full selves. Because we
Hmm.
are paving the way for the next generation to be comfortable in their own skin, whether they're wearing locks or whether they're wearing curls, and to still be able to go to the House of Commons and stand up in front of politicians and be their full self. You know what I mean? I think that's really key.
Amen. And that is a
Mhm.
beautiful, beautiful ending full circle ending to this conversation because period. Right?
Yeah.
Because period.
Period.
Yeah, okay, love it. So Tamara, please let people know where they can find you on social media, or if that's what you want, by the way, or that you're doing that you would love people to come and support you.
Yeah. I prefer LinkedIn. You could find me on LinkedIn, Tamara Angeline Medford-Williams. All my stuff is on there. Any workshops I'm doing, any events, any hosting, anything that I'm facilitating, it's on there so they can be informed. LinkedIn is my favorite place right now.
Okay. I got barred from LinkedIn. I don't know why. I just started
What?
I started an account. I think I just started like putting things, and then it was like asking me to be to prove my authenticity or prove that I'm actually me. And I was like, what? So then
were you adding a lot of people?
I don't think so.
Oh, I don't know. But LinkedIn is really the place to be. Great connections I've made on LinkedIn. Yeah, you could definitely find me on LinkedIn, keep up to date with everything.
Okay, cool. So LinkedIn it is. All right. Thank you so much, Tamara, for
Thank you.
Amazing conversation. I'm going to go ahead and put you backstage and sign out. And
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. All right, guys. So thank you so much for joining us tonight and joining this conversation. It was super informative, super just special. Tamara has, like I said, been on the show before, but this time it was different. She came last time. It was really her testimony that she shared with us, but this time she really came with her expertise and gave us such beautiful information. And I think for me, what I took out of this conversation the most is the importance of showing up authentically and advocating for yourself, not being scared to speak up and not taking those things home with you and ruminating on them and letting it affect you physiologically, mentally, and taking up any space spiritually in you. It's important to say how you feel, to call it out when you see it, and to just represent yourself in the most authentic, show up in the most authentic way. So I hope you got something special from this conversation as well. If you have, please make sure to hit share, like. If you are on YouTube, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so that you're advised when we go on live. Special announcement next week. We will not be here. I will not be live next week. We will be skipping ahead to the following week because I will. Next week is a special week for me. It is my birthday, and so turn up. I will not be here on the live, I should say. And so we will be back again, not the following Thursday, but the next Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, as usual. So make sure you're here to join in on this discussion with my next special guest. So that until then, take care.